everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. Some of us are a little less hairier than previous. There's no way a sane person would not say that doesn't feel good, whether they're rubber or rubby.
Oh, it's the best.
It's the best.
This is the best feeling, right?
It's the best. And you will notice that there are four of us, but you will also notice here that is not Brother Brian. We are very pleased to have with us Chris Cummins from Sci-Fi Explosion. He's been on the show before, and we're very happy to have you back. First time you've been on the show with video, though.
Yeah.
First time that.
Great. Thank you all for having me. I do not have the amazing beard that Brian has, but I will try to be as entertaining.
It's better than mine, so
Yeah.
I'm in a weird beard stage right now. Yeah.
Weird beard.
Weird
beard stage?
Yeah.
Weird beard.
So we're going to be talking about, as the show will suggest, comic books. A couple of other things that we usually do are Geek Gets and other stuff going around. Not too much in the space of comic-related news this week. But there is one sort of news flash for local people that involves Chris and myself. And if you are headed to Fan Expo at the Philadelphia Convention Center this upcoming Saturday, we're going to be on panel for, and I'm sorry I have to read this, the Dark Knights of the Roundtable, the Multiverse panel. It's going to be at 4 p.m. at Theater 8, which is room 117. And this is the description. I think this is a well-written description, actually. The multiverse era is here. The golden age of comic book movies saw the rise of our favorite superheroes on the big screen and in disconnected films. Then came the MCU and the rise of cinematic universes that saw our favorite superheroes living in an interconnected world. And now the walls of reality have cracked and the multiverse has been born. Panelists discuss what this means for the future of comic book movies and what they hope to see come from the multiverse of their favorite heroes. So that's what we'll be talking about on Saturday.
I like the idea. Bill and I were talking off air about other shared universes, and he brought up that the first shared universe that he remembered is the Happy Days universe.
Yeah.
No, before that, it was the Norman Lear universe.
Norman Lear universe, yes, and then we got into the Happy Days universe. And I love the idea of the panel talking about that and just going into that. Because I was saying to Bill, when I was a kid, there was that episode where Fonzie faked his own death, and they had Laverne and Shirley there, and the Big Ragu, and Lenny and Squiggy, and they all came to pay their respects, and 8-year-old Chris Cummins' head exploded at that.
Because Ross Kelly was such a freak, was that the first episode with Leather Tuscadero?
I
want to say it is. That may be the first
probably,
episode with Susie Quattro with Leather Tuscadero.
We've been talking about this a lot this week, so I feel like I owe it to myself to go into Paramount Plus and watch it.
Yeah.
Bill, was the Lee Falk stuff ever crossed over? Did Mandrake ever show up in the Phantom? I'm trying to think if that was a quote-unquote shared universe.
At the very least, it happened in the 80s. I'm not sure. I mean, crossovers that did happen. On radio, they did eventually reveal that the Green Hornet was the great-grandnephew of the Lone Ranger.
Yeah. And
there was an arc on the Green Hornet called Generations that did address that specifically. Gasoline Alley as a series often had guest appearances, and from what I understand nowadays, the Dick Tracy kind of serves as the retirement home for a lot of comic strip characters that haven't been seen in quite a while, like Little Orphan Annie and Brenda Starr.
Yeah.
But in terms
here I thought Beetle Bailey was pretty prolific too. Beetle Bailey and High and Lois were related. But also drawn by relatives.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was, with the King features, I think there was some connectivity, and this would have been easy because the strip was the topper. Jungle Jim was the topper to Flash Gordon. And if people aren't familiar with what a topper is, the topper was a strip that appeared above a bigger strip on the Sundays, and if the newspaper itself didn't have the space for it, they could eliminate the topper, and if they did, they could have it as part of the syndication package. It was something that went on back then, and I think there was connectivity for the King Features between Jungle Jim and Flash Gordon. I think that happened among the King Features. I mean, naturally in the 80s we did have Defenders of the Earth.
Yeah.
And that was reflected in some of the comic strips at the time. I think mostly as dreams. I think like the Phantom dreamed about Defenders of the Earth at the same time that Mandrake dreamed about it. But Chris,
how does Mary Worth factor in?
Chris, if you can provide some.
Yeah, there was also the Popeye Meets the Man Who Hated Laughter TV special, which was like an ABC Saturday morning hour-long like special that brought together. I believe that was all King's Features.
Yes, yeah,
who was in that. So that was a lot of fun, kind of bringing all the King's Features kind of syndicated newspaper strips characters together. Or just before like the multiverse was like a thing. There are all these examples throughout pop culture history of like, I know a lot of people go into because of Marvel thinking like Marvel invented it, but yeah, these things have been along forever. I mean, Archie, all the related characters and going back to the 40s. So yeah, it's
also interesting that Marvel has that rep where DC played with the interconnectivity much more in the Golden Age than Marvel did. Much more. Yeah.
Well, and even got the idea of a multiverse like in the 50s, wasn't it? With when was the Flash of Two Earths?
61, I think.
Published? 61.
Like
but still before Marvel did like the whole multiverse idea. But it's
there also is a division between connectivity and multiversity. Have to keep
multiversity. The Morrison magic word.
You like the way I worked that in there?
I did want to say hello to a couple people who have joined us today. We've got John Runyon, of course, Comic Book Bears Assemble, plus hi, Chris.
Hello.
Hey, John. It's nice for you to join us. And then, of course, David.
I'm sorry for interrupting David Toby, I see there. And yes, I am...
Deflufified.
Yeah, sorry about that interruption. I just did want to congratulate John on his acquiring a Marvel Spotlight #2, which is the first appearance of Werewolf by Night.
Cool.
Very nice. I just see John, with the kick he's on. John's kick right now is, the Midnight Suns and the Marvel horror stuff. And it was just in my head, he's been like, "Fly, bitches, fly."
Thank you, says John. Yes.
And he also recently got the second appearance of Moon Knight, which is a nice score.
That's fantastic.
From Werewolf by Night. Yeah. So, any of you guys see Morbius?
Nope, not yet.
Nope, nobody did. But I finally did see Spider-Man.
The Spider-Man.
I finally saw it. Yes, I finally saw it. Yeah. I figured for that panel I had to by then, But, it was, it was a big gap because of Omicron, and it's out there now, a little easier to be had, and saw it and very much enjoyed it. Enjoyed it. And
I was gonna say, it's like just build up a hot take. He's like, it was garbage. I hate all of them.
I have to see.
Tobey Maguire's my favorite Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's good for you. But I did keep myself basically spoiler free.
Oh my god!
As much as you could be. One big development I had no idea coming, so I was happy about that.
I'll talk to you off air about that.
Yeah. So John did sort of come back in here. I call myself the Wilson Fisk of online auctions. Make grown men weep.
Nice.
Yes, that's good. More for you, buddy.
Yeah, more for you, buddy.
Not touching that. No.
My essential version.
No auctions. Back issue hunting. No.
I will never criticize somebody for back issue hunting. I must say.
Nope.
I was gonna be like. So you said he had the second appearance of Moon Knight. First appearance was what? Werewolf by Night 32 or 34?
I want to say 32, and he got 33.
Okay, yeah, that's I couldn't remember which exact issue it was. I want to say that in the past decade, that has grown in value faster than Incredible Hulk 180 Incredible Hulk 181. Mm-hmm. It's still not as valuable, but it's grown in value faster. It's one of the fastest and that's impressive.
Yeah. So, well, some of the recent ones, like right now, you're seeing the Eternals plummet in value, and that's not necessarily a take on their validity as a franchise. That happens to everything once the film comes out. There always is a dip.
Especially certain franchises that weren't already big or well known prior to that. So
I mean, right now your jaw will drop at the most basic issues of She-Hulk. Right, what that's going on, and that's the first series is terrible. It's awful. It's awful.
Who did the first? Was it John Byrne? No. Did John Byrne do the first series?
Byrne was the revival.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, because he was.
I have number one.
It was like Salbuscan, but it was like Hacks. Yeah. It wasn't.
Yes. Tony Gilkinson has joined us. Evening, Comic Book Bears. Evening, Tony.
I am missing a Geek Get. I will have to get that a little later. When you guys start Geek Gets, I have to go scurry and get something.
Will you make the scurry sound when you?
It was the She-Hulk number one was Stan Lee and John Buscema.
Okay, but
those hacks.
They weren't on the run. They weren't on the whole run though.
No, don't see number two. No, number two was David Kraft and penciled by Mike Bossberg. Chick Stone did all the inking throughout it though. So that's
okay.
Yeah.
Hacks is probably too harsh a word, but.
Jose Escalin has joined us. Good evening, Jose. Thank you for swinging by. And we've also got Kristen Swords as well. They've been doing QR codes for the WBN appearances, Werewolf by Night, appearances of Moon Knight hidden in the episodes of the show. And I did notice that. Cool. I did notice a QN code on his storage locker, and I was like, "Gee, maybe I should pause it right there and actually go see what it is."
That will get you the Comixology version of it.
I guess it sends you. Yeah, it sends you to a digital version.
For somebody, somebody who purchases that freaking Thor Fortnite comic in Polish, hell, I'll get that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kristen. Yeah, for reminding us about that.
Thank you.
So, if you haven't seen the series yet, there's been 2 episodes released on Disney Plus. Go back through, look for QR codes, and give it a shot. See what you get. Possibly a virus, I don't know. But, most likely it's going to go straight to the Werewolf by Night issues. So you can read those digitally.
Thing that they're doing.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
That's cool. That's very cool. Has that been done before?
Yeah, in a crypto commercial, but...
All right.
But no, you see that a lot of advertising usually, but not so much. Not so much in the actual show.
I was talking specifically about Marvel.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool.
Chris is on here, and unfortunately, Chris had something not so great happen to him in the last few months, and we wanted to have him come on here to talk about it in case people ran into particular collections and runs that may be a signal that the people that are selling it shouldn't be. So, Chris, why don't you tell us what happened?
Yes. So back in November, I rented at an Extra Space Storage in Northeast Philadelphia, and my storage unit, and over the course of 2 weeks, about 30 other storage units got hit. And they, so much of my stuff was in there. All I know for sure that was absolutely stolen was 99.8% of my comic book collection and my collectible Archie Welch's sugar jam glasses from the 1960s and 70s. So my collection spanned back 4 years. It was primarily Archie. I would say almost entirely Archie, but there were a few other things in there. The complete run of She-Hulk was in there. So both the original run and the Byrne run, because I love She-Hulk, and then a lot of different She-Hulk appearances and everything. So of course, that happens when, those comics become hot. And I'm a guy who, my comic collection for the most part is just reader copies. And I tend to not bag and board things. But all those She-Hulks were in top edition. I also had the first couple of Wolverines. I had a Dark Knight Returns, first. So I did have some good, such as the Planned Parenthood issue of Spider-Man, and the complete 1970s run into 80s run of Life with Archie, which had the Archie adventure stories, which tend to be insane, and they incorporated the supernatural stuff. So yeah, so all the boxes were stolen. All the long boxes were gone. I had one long box here that never made it into storage, but that is mostly new stuff. I had an issue of the first print of Afterlife with Archie, signed by Roberto Aguirre Sacasa and Francisco Francavilla, and he did a doodle for me inside of it of zombie Jughead, and it says to Chris. A lot of these things that I got at shows were personalized.
Right.
They got most of my complete run of Paper Girls. The first issue of that I got signed by the whole creative team that I no longer have. So it's so it's just my Archie collection and then a few odds and ends. And I was very specific with my collection. It was mainly Bronze Age to 1983, 84 is where the kind of cutoff was, because again, I really love when Josie and the Pussycats, Life with Archie, that Wilkin Boy, Archie at Riverdale High would do the adventure comedy stories. So you'll have things like Betty chasing after a possessed teddy bear, and there's a whole Josie gets possessed by the devil in one issue of Josie and the Pussycats, and it's all the stuff that when people are like, Riverdale was the first time Archie ever got weird, it's no. So all this stuff is stuff that isn't main. It's not worth a lot of money financially, the Archie stuff, but the sentimental value of it was priceless, because a lot of it was stuff that my dad took me to comic books stores growing up and getting. My father's no longer living, and in the past couple of years of his life, we would go to a lot of flea markets. He would buy baseball cards, I would buy comic books. So it's more the sentimental value of things more than anything. So basically, I want to do a call to arms. If anyone out there sees or works at a comic shop that gets in this massive collection of thousands of Archie books, and then a few odd books the complete Kool-Aid Man run, and weird stuff like that. Anyone who knows me in real life would see this stuff and be like, oh my god, this is Chris's comic collection. My friend Ryan, who's watching this, he actually contacted me because a store by him in Jersey, he thought that they may have had my collection. It turned out not to be, but they had some great stuff. So I feel like I have so many people who are looking out for me in the comics community, which is great. Bleeding Cool did a thing, KYW News Radio did a thing, all these local media things have done a thing. And given the shit that's been going on in our world, one person's little comic collection getting stolen is kind of small beans, and I totally understand that. It was insured. I got the insurance money for it, but it's at the point too, it's more of the memories and the nostalgia, and I have started to buy back things, but this time I'm going to be a lot more selective, because I won't live another 40 years to be able to go and collect the collection that I had. So primarily I'm going to be focusing on getting all the Archie adventure things and having that be that. Now in Philadelphia and the Philadelphia kind of suburbs, there is a massive storage theft problem that is happening, specifically with Extra Space Storages. I'm not speaking off the record or saying anything slanderous or libelous. You can, check that. But I had 2 great locks on it and it didn't matter. And this person was in there who, the night of my theft, there was a theft the week before as well. The person was in the building for 8 hours. And this just happened about a month ago at another storage facility in Bensalem, which is not far from where I live currently. And this is a big problem up and down the East Coast right now. So if you have any books or things in storage, please go and check there on a regular basis. I was not checking on a regular basis because I was paying the rental fees. They called and they left a message for me that I never got. I found out a month later after the fact that my books were stolen. So it was my dog is howling at this news. So yeah, just please check your storage facilities. If I would not wish the comic collection being stolen on my worst enemy, because like, especially it was like, oh, what are like my favorite things in life? And one of them was Archie Comics. And to have all the floppies completely stolen was just like such a kick in the balls after like an already pretty miserable year. That was like the way the year ended for me. But you know, I gotta say, like, the comic community is amazing. You know, Jack Kirby had that saying that like comics will break your heart, but the community will repair it, because people I've never met like were so generous and coming to me and like contacting me and being like, hey, I got some Archie comics, do you want them? You know, my local comic shop, Brave New Worlds, puts aside like Archies for me whenever, you know, they know that I'll want them. So like, it's Archie comics. Look, I know they're very important to me. Most comic collectors don't give them a second thought. They're not really, you know, like worth much on a big financial, you know, point of view, but they're definitely like the sentimental value is priceless to me. So if anyone is in a store and they see a shady collection where there's things that are in their original mailer sleeves, because I had a bunch of those as well, or a lot of Archie comics that are signed to Chris, you know, I don't think there's many Chris's out there who have this stuff, you know, that is there. So if it turns up, you can hit me up at Sci-Fi Explosion and just let me know. Or if you're just an Archie fan and want to talk about it, I'm always down to talk Archie.
Speaking of that, I think a distinctive element of this is that you had your digest somewhere else.
Yes.
So if there's an Archie collection being sold that doesn't include digest, first of all, that's just weird.
Yes.
So I think if people do see something like that, dive into it a little further and get back to Chris on that, because
my digest never made it to storage, fortunately.
Yeah, because that's, you know, Archie and digest go hand in hand,
right.
And you know, what do you know?
Hey!
You know, so
we're talking 2,000 to 3,000 books at this point.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind. If you do see something that is put up for sale, or, you know, Reddit and all this shit, yard sales, you know, it could be anywhere. So just if you are a listener, just keep your ears and eyes open on that particular front, because there's nothing I would like more than to reunite Chris with his material. Also, Chris, I've known you for a long time, and this is the first damn time I've heard you say that you love She-Hulk. So
I like to keep people guessing, Bill. You know, I'm an onion.
He's a man of mystery.
Well, Chris, you did mention Sci-Fi Explosion. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What you do on a
Sci-Fi Explosion.
Basis?
About 8 years ago, I started as kind of a live show. I call it a cosmic cabaret of craziness. It started because I love the music video for Billy Ocean's Loverboy, which, if you haven't seen it, it's basically the best Star Wars movie that's never been made. It is Billy Ocean in this cantina full of crazy aliens. And the song is amazing. And that video, to me, it represents how science fiction has permeated like the strangest and farthest reaches of popular culture. So I wanted to do this kind of show that was kind of an audio video variety show where I would show different things that were like, here's a weird science fiction commercial. Like, here's how RoboCop was used to sell jeans. And, you know, more different science fiction music videos. And from there, it kind of became this whole like live performance thing, and when I do the live show at events, I usually have like special guests and things like that. But I do it weekly. I do 2 shows a week, one every Friday night at 7:30 at my Twitch station, which is Sci-Fi Explosion, and every week is a completely different show where I will have interviews with like celebrities. I've had friend of the show Ed Luch on for my Pride show last year. 2, I do like a science fiction show and tell, which is very similar to your Geek Gets. And then every Saturday morning, I do Cosmic Cartoons, which is a 2 to 3 hour block of vintage Saturday morning cartoons that I've curated right down to like the commercial breaks. So it'll be like you're watching the strangest Saturday morning cartoon block ever, where you'll have things from the 70s and the 90s commingling, and weird forgotten public service announcements and commercials. The commercials and everything tend to have a science fiction twist to them, or it's just stuff that I love and I like to beat into the ground, like the Nestle's Alpine White jingle. If you don't know what that is,
you're killing that. It's too much.
It's amazing. Oh, I'm just running it into the ground.
Much.
I just love it into the ground.
I'm having like a visceral, like Pavlov's dog reaction to it, and I don't want to.
Yes. So, so it's just like, it's just fun nonsense. All these shows and things I do are kind of fun nonsense to try to distract people from the hellstorm that is real life.
Yeah.
Well, hey, before you continue, we actually have a question from the audience.
Okay.
So John Runyon wants to know if you are reading the current run on She-Hulk, and if so, what are your thoughts on it, and how does it compare to the previous volumes? Because now you are apparently a She-Hulk super fan that we didn't know about.
Okay.
So yeah,
I just got I really loved John Byrne's run on it, and that kind of was what set me off. I haven't read the new one. Who is the writer on that? Is it
Caleb's the person who should say this, because I haven't read her.
Yeah, I don't know who the writer on it is.
Tamaki, and her like very good but very sad She-Hulk
story. So I haven't read it. I'll probably wait for the trades, because like I am kind of at this point jaded about floppies because of I still have kind of a little bit of PTSD about that. But I'm always down to see what She-Hulk is up to and want to enjoy. Dan Slott was the name I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
Oh no, he hasn't been on that in like.
He did a run that I haven't even caught up to that yet.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, right now She-Hulk is hanging out with Jack of Hearts, and it's being written by Rainbow Rowell. Rohan Antonio is doing the artwork on that. It's good stuff. It's a
so that's where she went to after Runaways. Okay, I was wondering.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, we've made a couple of allusions to it while we were discussing everything so far, and we do have a segment we call Geek Gets, and I'm going to start this off with Steve. That he has a particular Geek Get that ties into other people, mainly me with the T-shirt. But I'm going to go because I have to go get something that Tony reminded me of. So why don't you take it away with the Geek Get that you got, Steve?
So, everybody knows that when it comes to Geek Gets, usually I'm the odd one out. Everybody else has really cool stuff that they picked up over the past week or so, and I'm the one who's like, I didn't leave the house. Well, I still didn't leave the house for this one, but I did order it through TCBS. And really, it's actually Fantagraphics back in, I think it was 2015, published a compendium of Japanese gay artists of a particular type of Japanese manga art, and that is bara art, and that is massive. Fantagraphics just came back, to reprint this, so it does actually, I believe, have an updated cover from the original cover that was published in 2015. Different trade dress and all of that. But and I'm covering a little bit because there's, it is adult content for those of you interested in it, but it is absolutely wonderful. The art in it is fantastic. If you haven't read any gay bara comics, manga, or know anything about the artist, there's plenty of information on the artists, interviews with the artists and writers, and of course, plenty of examples and whole stories and different manga. It's fantastic. It is really cool to read. Definitely not for kids. It is also extremely erotic. There's some really, really erotic, very interesting things there for all tastes. But it's absolutely gorgeous. There's a lot of really wonderful art in here that runs the gamut from manga and I guess a general manga style that you might be used to with other mainstream, but also some very interesting twists that we don't see too often out here in the U.S. Not so much, and then of course some beautiful painted and computer art, just like the cover on both sides, because you do see some really wonderful stuff there. I believe that's Jiraiya who did the cover.
Quite a bit, right?
Yes, Gengoro Takame is prominently featured as one of the first artists, writers to be interviewed and profiled with an example, an excerpt of one of his stories. So some really great stuff. Put out by Fantagraphics. So
I just want to jump in because I'm going to talk about this for a second too, because I have my copy here, and I'm obsessed with this right now. There's a question I have for you, Steve, and if anyone else at home has read this. Steve, before you read this book, have you ever heard the phrase Cowper's gland? Because it is used quite a bit in this book.
So I've heard it, but I didn't know what it was. But no, yeah, no, I can't even remember where you read that in this, but yeah,
the school set story, and that's I think all I can legally say. But yeah, this is Tagame has 2 volumes of his work. The Passion of Gengoro Tagame is being reprinted this month or next month by Fantagraphics as well. Finally coming back into print. I've been wanting that forever, so I'm so glad to see that. And also, I just want to throw out there, like, if anyone out there hasn't seen it, Graham Colbeans, who is one of the editors of this book, his Queer Japan documentary is an absolute must.
Yeah.
It is so
Brian's talked about that before when it first came out. Like he really did talk a lot about that, and it's again, if you saw that and you haven't read Massive, or you've read Massive and now you want to see some more, that's definitely a good resource. So yeah, fantastic. And I think we all own a copy of this.
I have one of the earlier printings over there.
I was trying to get it forever, and I'm so glad
Caleb doesn't.
Surprisingly, I don't. This is one of the few things that I don't have by Gengoro Tagame or anything. So that is being rectified very quickly, though. Okay. I mean, My Brother's Husband, I've got that. The Ode to Tom. By the way, if y'all don't have the Ode to Tom book, that's awesome. So it's the same vein. It's all Japanese manga artist.
Yeah. That's right, because you talked about that actually a couple weeks ago, and that was very cool.
Okay. Chris, we'll go over to you. Do you have anything else you want to show off?
Yeah, these are kind of just there's a great bookstore in the Italian market here in Philadelphia, that the name of which I'm going to completely forget, but it doesn't matter because I wiped them out of their cool stuff right now. And I just got, these are like $3 each. I just got the Fantastic Four Doomsday Marv Wolfman old prose novel, and 2 volumes of Dick Tracy, His Greatest Cases. Now, the past couple of years, I've been kind of resisting getting into Dick Tracy because I have that special kind of ADHD where I just can't like something. I have to completely become consumed by it. And these paperback trades are kind of, I'm surprised. I'm really loving them. But it's also like I don't feel that I have to go out and collect all of it. So that was a nice surprise.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, especially given Dick Tracy. So
That's a good thing.
These are like, I forget, $2 or $3 each. But I love, I especially love the Marvel ephemera stuff. So like this book, I haven't read it yet. It's on my next to read, but I have a bunch of these from the 70s when they were doing the prose novels, and I just love the painting on the cover.
Yeah, they're beautiful. Bob Larkin and some other people. Yeah, I have the Spider-Man, the Murder in Manhattan, and I have the Marvel superheroes anthology, which has the 4. I know Hulk and X-Men are in. I forget what the other 2 were, but I have those 2 from the prose books. Okay.
Cool.
All right, Caleb.
I will go. So as you guys know, I'm a big fan of the Marvel property. I guess it's technically now it's Disney property, Gargoyles. And there is a new line of gargoyle statues that NECA is putting out, and they're all expensive and fun and stuff. But since this has brought people back into it, and the fact that it's on Disney Plus right now, people have been people have been it's resurfacing, right? But I've been a fan of this forever. I love it. But my local comic shop has been getting in some of the original wave action figures, and I've been picking them up whenever they come in. So I grabbed at my little store this week Demona, and added her to my collection. And I paid like $15 for that. It's not a lot, but it's fun stuff. I haven't decided whether they're going to make their way out of the packages or not, but that's to be determined, because those things, I mean, unless you have those massive shelves, it's hard to like put those stuff up where you can see them. And I like to see them. Gargoyles is cool. And then this is going to be like emphasis on the geek with the Geek Gets, but it's probably the thing I'm most excited about. I got bags and boards this week. So, this is manna from nerd heaven.
It's so hard. In places it has been hard to find those, and now that we found, we finally have some of that around near me. But now we don't have any boxes. There's no short boxes. There's barely any long boxes.
You see the Superman here. It's actually easier to find the character boxes now than it is the white ones.
Yeah.
It's weird, but just like we were having the supply shortage, that should be rectified soon. I have a few, but most of my Geek Gets I can't show. Last week, I went to see Sparks over at Town Hall in New York City. I went with my best friend Stu Scheinman. We've known each other since 1974, which is it older than all 3 of you? Were you all born after 74? Okay, fucking old. Okay. But because of circumstances, Stu has not seen them since 1983, so this was huge for him. We ended up going both nights. Great time. But I can't show you anything, just my word that was the experience. A few quick things. Tony was on the horn there. If people are into my Facebook feed, a couple of weeks ago, I posted, and I have a bunch of these OCD triggers in my shelves between the DVDs, and then it'll go Blu-ray, DVD, Blu-ray, the kind of stuff that if you did have OCD would drive you nuts. And I did have a series of the Star Trek logbooks, which were the novelizations of the animated series from the 70s, and all of them were uniform, except I did have one that was volume 3 in one of the later reissue covers, and Tony was kind enough to send me a copy of 3 that was in line with the others. So no more OCD trigger there. And
That's
Tony,
fantastic.
thank you for that. That was really cool. Very minor get, but we're saying the last print edition of Entertainment Weekly came out.
Oh, wow.
Late last month, and it has Obi-Wan Kenobi in an article about the upcoming series. That's the last print version that they'll have. So if you can find that on the stands, it's the last time you will see it. So, I guess when did that start? Like Chris, like 1991? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So
I remember getting the first issue.
For years.
Pretty long run there. This is something Chris and Steve both know about. I spend an inordinate too much time in dollar stores trying to find gems, and this isn't a gem, but it's also it might be a harbinger of better things to come. This is a 1947 film on DVD called That's My Mom with Don Amici. That doesn't matter. What matters is that this was released by Olive Films, which, along with Kino Lorber and the big one, Criterion, is one of the major reissuers of prestige films. That this was in Dollar Tree gives me hope, for the future. And Chris, naturally, I will be on the lookout for you.
See that bucket of blood? Jump on it.
Yeah. One thing I had to grab Chris and myself pop culture bento box from Sony with a bunch of stuff for the.
You're my friend, Bill. You're my friend.
Yes, I am. And then my last geek get that I wanted to show off is, we usually do represent music somehow. And in my travels in New York City last week, I did pick up a vinyl copy of Ways by Zyla. I got a lot of shine here, but if you can see here, I'll try to give it so you can see just what a beautiful cover that is. And Zyla is a black trans classically trained musician that ended up going the producer route. And this is kind of this really weird, cool ambient IDM blend. I know I'm over 50. You'd probably be shocked that I even know the term IDM, but I'm me. And
Brian.
It's just some really good stuff there. Really good stuff.
Bill, you are cool. Why are you selling yourself short? Like,
because I have to at points.
You know all the cool stuff, man.
But you can't say that you're cool because
I can't say that I'm cool.
I can say that. All these people.
I'm high end cool. Gen X. I'm high end Gen X. You're mid Gen X. I'm high end Gen X. We have boomer hangups, whether we admit it or not. Okay, there you go.
Oh my God.
I'm late stage Gen X then, I guess, because I'm 80. So I guess 1980 is the last.
You're like
gasp.
kind of at the cutoff, and then the friggin' millennial.
Yeah.
But Chris, as you might have already surmised, Caleb's an old soul.
I'm a bad millennial. Yeah, I'm not a good millennial at all. So.
All right, name of the show is Comic Book Bears. Let's talk about some comics. We'll start as we always do with Steve. Tell us something about your reading that you're digging.
So, I'm going to talk about a whole mess of books that I actually was able to finally catch up on. And I haven't talked about this for a while, but it is one of my favorite series. And I unfortunately just had it at, kind of in the midpoint of my pile, and things just kept getting put on top of it. So I wasn't able to read a lot of it until just the other day, and I finally caught up on Firepower. And Firepower is one of the latest books from Kirkman, with art by Chris Samney and Matt Wilson on colors. And I'm going to talk about the colors a little bit here because I don't think I talked about it the first time it came. When this book first came out, I know I talked about it on the show, but it is consistently one of the most fun, interesting little books that comes out. It doesn't get a lot of attention now. I mean, originally when it was first put out, it started with a Free Comic Book Day issue that ended up being the full issue number 1. Sorry, the full issue number 0, and then of course the full issue number 1. But it's such a great book. It's consistently fun. It's got a great family at the core. It is essentially about a young man who follows his ambition up to a mountain stronghold where he's taught the intricacies of secret kung fu from a wise old master. And turns out that he also has a special power that he can create fireballs from his chi. So yeah, pretty cool. Falls in love with one of the other monks up there, and they fight off the bad guys who've been trying to break into the well of the dragon that they've been guarding all this time. Like all sorts of really cool, really amazing kung fu type stuff. And then it fast forwards to him years later with a family of his own, with a wife who's a cop and with 2 young kids. And they don't really know, or at least the kids don't really know, that he's actually a pretty well accomplished, super-powered kung fu master until they get attacked by some what looks to be people from his old temple. That's what's been happening, what happened in the first 12 issues or so. Since then, and especially when it came to the climax up to issue 18 before it went on the last break, it turns out that the temple, that the Well of the Dragon and the the monastic temple that was there was not to protect the secrets of the dragon. It was actually to lock that dragon away, because we find out that really the people who've been trying to free the dragon, or have been there in support the whole time, are actually evil, and there's a lot of evil snakes, and it's really cool if you love evil snakes, because they get everywhere. They're mind controlling, they're wild, they take over an entire other temple of kung fu martial arts masters with lots of technology. It is so fantastic. There's so much action, explosion, lots of fire, lots of people, snakes exploding. It's just a fun, dynamic book. And the colors by Matt Wilson gives you the feel of a 70s or early 80s Shaw Brothers type production. It's an interesting sort of, it's all fully colored, but there's sort of like maybe a vintage wash over it that kind of gives you that sort of memory, that picks that little memory. And it's just fun. It's exciting. The whole family's together now. They're up in the mountains. And just yesterday, it did come back with issue number 19. Introduces a whole new character who's here on the cover. And the unfortunate thing that happened at the end of the last break is that the dragon itself has been freed, and it is a real dragon. And this issue, basically the world finds out that, hey, giant kung fu dragons are real, which is pretty fantastic. And it's a great book. It's very cinematic in its feel, but that, again, like a Shaw Brothers kind of cinematic film. There's lots of great set pieces, tons of action, lots of kung fu excitement. I really recommend this series a lot. I think this is really great. If you like Walking Dead, it is nothing like The Walking Dead. This is Robert Kirkman having a ton of fun with Chris Samnee and basically making the wuxia / kung fu movie they've always wanted to see, writ large, and it's a lot of fun. And again, the volumes have been released already, including the last story arc. So issue number 19, it just came out yesterday, allows you to kind of jump right on into the next story arc. So yeah, highly recommend it. Put out by Image.
Very quick question. I bailed at the second issue.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't connecting with me, but with trades, we can always reconnect with it later. What has been the publishing frequency with this? Because it seems that seemed far longer than 19 months ago.
Yes. So it will have 5 issues. 5 issues will come out, about 5 to 6 issues. The story arc will end, and it'll go on break for, I think usually it's about 3 or 4 months. So we'll just take a nice long break. It's not, I guess, kind of similar to how Saga was doing it before their 3-year break. But so it's issue number 1 came out 4 years ago, maybe.
Was that the book that they did the big comic shop gimmick with? I know Kirkman did something with one of those.
That was Die Die Die.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that was,
which I loved. I love Die Die Die. It was insane. It was such an insane book. This is a ton of fun. If you grew up with kung fu movies, or if you like that sort of era, and this adds in that element of sort of like the fire, and now mind control snakes. It's a blast. So if you tried it out, didn't really like the first couple issues, give it another shot. It's out in trades. You can probably find them at conventions now, pretty affordably. So.
Okay. All right, let's go over to our guest, Chris. Chris, tell us about something you're reading that you're enjoying or are connected.
Okay, I have back and forth about 100 times on this. So I narrowed it to 2 things. One is kind of a shameless plug, but not that much. It just came out yesterday. It's the Archie's Anniversary Spectacular, which is just a one-shot celebrating the history of the Archies. Full disclosure, I did do kind of a timeline and trivia page in this book. But obviously I would be all about this book. If not, it reprints the story when the Archies meet Don Kirshner. So it's a lot of fun, and it's got some of the fun Archie's adventures over the year. But the main book I want to talk about, that this is not one I mentioned to you before because I've changed this 100 times. This is Legendary Spirits. This is an indie comic by Derek Marks. Derek Marks, you may know from his self-published books, Fabulous Topless Woman and 120 Minute Sketches, in which he took old interviews from 120 Minutes and drew them out. And I'm a big 120 Minutes fan. And so, like, I love his stuff. So Legendary Spirits gathers the 3 issues he did of the book Grace, Jerry, Jessica, and Me, which there was a famous story / rumor that in the 1970s in Paris, Grace Jones, Jerry Hall, and Jessica Lange all shared an apartment together. And kind of what Derek does is he inserts himself into this as the 4th roommate and basically goes on to fantastic adventures with the 3 of them amidst the backdrop of the late 70s, early 80s. And it is just incredibly witty. I have to show you this one kind of beautiful splash page from the last issue. Just the art is so like lovely and cartoonish and stunning. Like here's like his vision of like the most fantastic party ever, and you can see like Divine's there, and at one point he sees like Susie Sue as a guardian angel. So if you're into like that kind of like culture from the 70s and 80s and like celebrity culture when it was like at its highest and most ridiculous, but before it became completely vapid, it's great. And like the thing about the story is not only do you get things of like, the 3 of them turning into basically vampires and sucking the souls out of like shitty guys, it also like there are parts of the book that are this really interesting, like almost when Derek as a openly gay man flashes back to like his neuroses as a kid. There's a great story where he's going to present Grace Jones with a copy of this comic, and it flashes back to when Madonna was his imaginary friend, and it's really kind of touching and funny and just really, really sweet. And like I am so enamored with his style of art and with his, like this is a true independent book. You can get it, just Google Derek Marks, and you can, and it's Legendary Spirits. And it's fantastic. I love all of his stuff. Fabulous Topless Woman, which is exactly what you can imagine it to be. That's fantastic too, as is the 120 Minutes thing. But this, seeing the adventures of Derek and Grace Jones, Jessica Lange, and Jerry Hall, it's just such an out there concept that it's the sort of thing that it just gets its hook into you, and it's a real quick read, but it's going to stay with you like long after you're done with it. And it's just unabashedly fun and queer and delightful, and I can't recommend it enough. Derek Marks is a genius.
How do you get this book?
You can get it. I got this through his webpage.
Okay.
So, yeah, you can just Google. I'm seeing if there's an address in here. If you Google Derek Marks Legendary Spirits, you'll be able to purchase it.
Because I do have the 120. They're almost like Chick tracts.
Yes. There were 2 volumes of those.
Yeah, and we did interview Derek Marks for one of the live shows.
Okay.
I'm sorry I started cracking up, but one of my best friends, Bill Stewart, from the old law firm that I worked at, there was a time we went to see the Strokes and Guided by Voices for New Year's Eve. We actually went on the 30th. They had shows on the 30th. And Bill was online for so long. It's so weird. He was online to get beer, but people were buying him beer while he was online. So when he got back, he was smashed. And I don't know where this came from, but when you said Jessica Lange, this is how he addressed me when he came back to the seats after like being away for like 45 minutes. Jessica Lange is number one. Jessica Lange is gonna star in Fanny, her tribute to the Great White Way. So there's a certain group of people that whenever somebody says Jessica Lange, we just immediately go to Jessica Lange is number one. So
that's fantastic.
Sorry,
that just sounds. I mean, this book.
cracking up.
This book sounds
like
a hoot.
It sounds like coked out beauty. that.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah,
oh man,
You had me at Divine at a party.
Yeah, divided a party. I mean, like that splash page was like, "Where's Waldo's Studio 54?"
And
like,
actually, I ordered the first edition, and it came with a poster of that. I don't know if it still does, but I very much will claim this. And also, it came with this postcard of Vivian Westblood.
Why not? Why not? I just put it up here. Just put it up here for the people watching. But Mudflat Boy over on Twitch, Comic Book Bears are back. Missed you all. Well, thank you very much, Mudflat Boy.
Thank you.
But yeah, Chris, I'm jealous. I want that.
I can't recommend it enough.
I have to get it because Jessica Lange is number one.
Yeah,
okay.
Bill, I know you will love it.
Fanny, The Great White Way. She'll be starring in it.
And it's funny because I just haven't heard the name Derek Marks in a while.
Yeah, that's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, so I'm really happy to hear about this book. Thank you for letting us know. All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, tell us about something you're reading that you're digging.
Well, I'm going to take it a little bit more mainstream. Past week, a few weeks ago, I don't know because my stuff's piling up because that's how school works now. But a anthology book came out. It was a kind of a one shot. It was the Sensational Wonder Woman Special. And when it comes to DC, Wonder Woman's my girl. That's that's I'm gonna pick up her stuff. But with these anthologies, a lot of times they're hit and miss with how they can how the stories are landing. A lot of times it's the avenue for new creators to come in and get their foot in the door and everything. This was pleasant. I won't even say pleasantly surprising. It was just good. It was pleasant. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It has 3 stories, and you get a little sneak peek into the Flashpoint Beyond. That's going to be, it's the Jeff Johns and Eduardo Riso thing that's about to be happening at DC, the 0 issue there. But so the first of these stories, actually the first one was my favorite. This one was written by Paula Sevenbergen with Paul Pelletier on the pencils and Norm Rappman on the inks, Adriano Lucas doing the colors on that, or the letters on that, excuse me. You jump over and you've got another book, which was my favorite visual story, of the issue. This one was called the Thren of Doom, written by Scott Collins, written and drawn by Scott Collins. And Scott Collins has a style that worked really well for this because it is, in its form, it's a throwback to George Perez. It's not, it's not a carbon copy of what George Perez did, but you can definitely see those roots there. And then the third and final story in that is written by someone who has done fairly well with Wonder Woman in the past few months, Stephanie Phillips. And it's got Althea Martinez on the pencils, Dexter Vines and Vicente Cifuentes to the inks, with Wendy Broom and Carrie Strahan on the colors, and Becca Carey doing the letters. So I mentioned, I will talk about the first 2 stories because those are the ones that really got me. The third story was great. It's fine. Stephanie Phillips did a great job with it, but the actual writing of the first story, this was just delightful. Not only because it just hit that right tone for a Wonder Woman story. I feel like, it had, at the end of it, there was a bit of moralistic messaging to it. It had the spirit and the kindness and the hope of a Wonder Woman story that it should have. But it also had that like old school DC flair, ridiculous villain legacy kind of thing that DC is really known for. And it just touched my heart. I thought it was fantastic. So the story kicks off with this in this neighborhood, and they're having a superhero day, or a superhero day, kind of a cosplay party. And all these kids are dressing up like superheroes or whatever. And you've got this young boy who comes walking up there, and he's decked out in his little Wonder Woman gear. Like, he's got everything. And, I made it through the second page of this story when I realized something about myself. And I think we've all been here. Sometimes, the me and also me memes that you see on Facebook, where, so I had that moment. So, me thinks that DC needs to quit making dark and gritty movies. Also me, if I make a DC movie, this kid gets murdered hard first in the first scene. There is a kid who's dressed up like Robin, who's just a bully. Like goes up to our young man who's dressed up like Wonder Woman and just like knocks him in the dirt, starts making fun of him because he's a boy dressed up like Wonder Woman, and just starts saying all of these rude things rooted in homophobia that kids are going to want to say because kids are shitty. But right about this time, it just gets really cold. Like you start seeing ice just come across. And that is because there's a villain called the Blue Snowman that has made its way back into the city. And this is an old school villain. Like this person has been locked up and was supposedly, taken care of and off the grid. And the Blue Snowman is kind of, and Bill, you may be able to speak to this more than I could. You may have seen the character before, but it's kind of a Mr. Freeze analog. It's just a dude who has not even a Mr. Freeze analog. He's just got gadgets. Like he's built like a frost gun. Like I said, this old school kind of just ridiculous villain trope that DC was so good at. Almost a Captain Cold gimmick to it. But yeah, this big Iron Man type suit that shoots out freeze rays and can drop everything into just the polar depths of winter in a heartbeat, and literally puts the city on ice. For what? We can only imagine. There's the heist part of it. There's vengeance. There's revenge for locking him up. But it's just wreaking havoc on the city. And lo and behold, who comes to save everybody but Diana herself, the Princess of Themyscira, Wonder Woman, in all her glory, just comes in to save folks like she does. And she jumps right into the action, and she's saving kids, and she's also going after the bad guys. She's balancing these two things. Our young man has his comeuppance moment where he is, has the opportunity to leave the bully trapped under a hot dog stand that gets knocked over, or he can help him, and he's going to help him. At that same time, Wonder Woman has to step in and rescue her kid because freeze rays and deaths. But Diana gets hit with the freeze ray. Oh no, what's going to happen? Well, look, it's a short story as a part of an anthology, so you can just imagine she's Diana. She breaks out, and then she proceeds to tackle, subdue this Blue Snowman, who is not, and I won't spoil it, but who is not who they thought he was. It's actually somebody else that's tied to the Blue Snowman, but I won't say who. Somebody who was convinced that might makes right and was consumed by revenge, and kind of a generational trauma story, which I think is fantastic. Even when that person is presented as the villain, books that talk about generational trauma are necessary. I think they're fun. Wonder Woman is a great vehicle to tell those stories, I feel. So it was just fun. And then the second story, like I said, this was visually my favorite. Long story short, there's a team up between Wonder Woman and Dr. Fate. Some scientists yank a giant gem out of the ocean floor and unleash a mega beast thing that turns out not to be such a bad guy because he's trying to stop some giant Cthulhu monster from soaking up the world. So anyway, totally not Godzilla is rolling in there trying to stop it. But of course, everybody wants to stop the giant Godzilla thing that is trying to get the magic gem that's being used for nuclear issues. And then Dr. Fate gets to jump in. But like I said, it is visually rooted in George Perez, that art style. George Perez is, as you guys know, my GOAT, greatest of all time. And for me, if there's a Mount Rushmore of comics artists, George Perez is on there. He's the reason I picked up comics, reason I kept reading comics. And he's having a rough year. So, it was nice seeing these artists who are obviously inspired by George do some really incredible work. And anytime you get a team up between Dr. Fate and Wonder Woman, why would you not read that? And Dr. Fate is written really, really well in this. And it's not.
Is it the current Kaled version of Dr. Fate, or is it the Kent Nelson?
It's Kent Nelson.
Yeah. Good.
Steve, you read this too. Did it specify that, or did you just kind of pick up on that?
Well, Khalid is because he's a kid. Yeah. Whereas Kent's kind of he's the stodgy. Yeah, he's the stodgy Connecticut dude. Yeah. Who's been kind of, or Massachusetts. The stodgy Massachusetts, white dude who's been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
I also liked the interplay there because there were times where Wonder Woman was like, "Where'd Dr. Fate go?" Fuck it. I'm here. Okay.
You invited me to this party. How are you going to disappear?
I like there was that word bubble that had icicles on it. It's like, well, I guess I'll do it myself. It was just perfect Diana, Okay, dude, go off and do your thing. I'll take care of the giant monster destroying the city. Love it. Love it.
But if we don't have a lot of time, right? Like we're all busy people. If you don't have time to keep up with continuity, you don't have time to read a bunch of books. You just want something that kind of like the Archie Digest and stuff like that you can grab, pour through. Nothing else. This spectacular, this one shot is worth picking up. It's a fun time, and then Stephanie Phillips is going to be writing Wonder Woman ongoing very soon, from what I understand. So cool stuff. Good reason to pick this book up. Lots of fun. Highly recommend it.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
When you mentioned this book, I knew I had it in pre-order, and it's going to be in my box tomorrow. But for the digital aspect, because Sensational Wonder Woman was a digital first series, and then they printed them in single issues. And I thought this may have already been on the digital platform. And actually, these were 3 stories that were intended for that series, but were not completed in enough time before that ended. In fact, Sina Grace's story was one of the stories that this replaced, just because they were farther along the line.
Gotcha. Okay.
So some interesting backstory, but I'm glad they saw print, and I'll be really looking forward to that tomorrow. We mentioned we're crushed for time and everything, and a perfect antidote to that is to attack a one shot. So that's what I did for both of my books. I've been Mr. Marvel digital like these past 2 weeks. It's been strange, but I'm filling in a lot of Marvel gaps there right now. World War Hulk.
Emphasis on strange.
Yeah, maybe. And the book that I want to talk about, this is the variant cover by Brian Hitch. This is the Geiger 80-page giant. Geiger was the first volume. Was 6 issues from Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. Took place in 2050. There was a limited nuclear exchange in the United States. The areas surrounding Las Vegas are one of the patches where people are still existing, and the casinos have basically become their own communities. And Geiger was a kind of uneven series, but it ended very satisfactorily. And this plugs in some of the gaps. We have we find out how Geiger has a 2-headed dog as a pet, Barney, and we find out how he and Barney got together in this. And you'd mentioned some of the people. Jeff Johns is the writer. Paul Pelletier is one of the artists in 2 of the stories in here, and it covers a lot of other things that are going on, which I guess we're going to be calling the Mad Ghost universe, because that's Jeff Johns' imprint with Image. We've already seen some of the characters. We've seen Junkyard Joe. Chris, I think you would really enjoy what we've seen with Junkyard Joe. It's actually like a bit of a Beetle Bailey type of strip with a GI robot kind of situation. But then when he's actually introduced into the series, it's hyper realistic, and
that looks great.
Yeah, so he's already appeared in the pages of Geiger. The landscape of that particular world, though, goes from 1776 to 2050. There's something that happened called the Unknown War. We haven't seen that yet, but all of these participants in these particular storylines are somehow involved. But again, it's almost like Lost. It's an unraveling continuity, as we find out. But we are introduced to some of the denizens. The main feature is introducing Redcoat, who is a British soldier during the Revolutionary War, who should be dead and is not. And also, he should have killed George Washington, and he didn't. So, by some mechanism that we're unsure of, both Redcoat and George Washington are immortals. And it's a really good wrap up to the story, and interesting to see how it goes. One of the best features in here, again, we have the different casinos have the different cultures. One of the casinos is the Karloff, and a wonderful 8-page story about the people that are part of the Karloff community. exquisite horror art by Kelly Jones in here, and written by Sterling Gates, who's a name I haven't seen in a while in relation to comics. Tying into the again Jay Ferber, who basically has gone on to a fairly successful career on television as a showrunner for Zoo and for Supergirl. He has a story in here about what's happening in outer space as the Unknown War and later the events in Geiger take place. There's another story with a more pirate-oriented casino, which was done in a wonderful Don Bluth style, if you can see that there. So for an 80-pager, you have a tremendous variety of types of stories, and yet they are connected. We just haven't seen all of the threads of how they are connected. So
kind of
yeah,
seems
go
like
ahead.
it kind of seems like it has a Project Superpowers feel to it.
It doesn't.
Really? Okay.
It doesn't, because it's not superheroes.
Right.
And I think that's a very deliberate choice. Even Geiger, with his identity as the glowing man, is far more a threat than a heroic figure to most people.
Okay.
But I see where you're coming from in terms of what we do have in Project Superpowers with Pandora's Box and the continuance of time. I understand where you're coming from, but it's also not it's not very superhero-y, at least so far. And it's also kind of wild seeing an Image comic with a Stargirl back cover. I think that's pretty cool. So I would definitely read Geiger first. I would definitely read that first. But if it is something you connect with, this is a really nice bridge into some of the other stuff that we're happening. And in 2022, we are going to have a Red Coat and a Junkyard Joe series. So looking forward to that.
It's really interesting because it seems like for I guess probably lead up to and of course the 30th anniversary for Image, they're doing a lot of additional sort of connected universe type releasing. I mean, you've got what's going on with Radiant Black and the supermassive universe that they've been starting to build, and actually is now starting to happen with Rogue Sun and Radiant Red.
Yeah.
You've got this one. You've got more.
What seems to be some kind of Cyberforce relaunch.
Yep.
If you look at the solicits, they're all these anniversary issues of Cyberforce, and so something's brewing there. And with the Top Cow stuff, I know that we have connections between Witchblade and the Darkness. Was Cyberforce ever part of that mix?
Silvestri, I don't know. Silvestri stuff, I can't recall.
I think later on they branched over in there, but I think Cyberforce was more. I think it touched on Wildcats once or twice, but
they all did with with Youngblood and Spawn and Spawn. I almost said Swamp, Spawn. They all had for those first few years prior to Liefeld and Lee leaving. There was a good amount of.
Everybody crossed over with Savage Dragon.
Mark, so I'll pick it up.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to capture that feel by having a lot more interconnectivity. Maybe not with all the books, because they publish way too many books that are just so many genres that really don't lend themselves to this kind of interconnected superhero or otherwise universe. But being able to sort of carve out these new niche, comic book universes is something that seems to be happening a lot lately with Image.
And it's also been interesting because I don't think anybody works with continuity better than Jeff Johns for DC. And seeing him not shackled by that and creating his own thing, of course there's analogs. I mean, it's just there. But you do feel like he's kind of, it's like a second act for him in a sense. And I know, and I think, Steve, I know that you read, I'm not sure if you'd agree with me, Caleb, but his Dragonfly story in the Black Horror, that was terrifying. I was like, that was like one of those leave the lights on when you go to sleep kind of.
You're talking about the Black Hammer?
Black Hammer. Yeah, the Black Hammer Visions.
I think it was.
So
such a great job on that.
I'm really looking forward to what's coming down the pike with this.
Well, I did want to mention John Runyon when we started. He's so happy that you're rocking Marvel because John is Mr. Marvel, whereas Bill is like the DC guy.
You have to understand this, and I told John this. It's just not a lot of Marvel that's connecting with me. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just not connecting with me. There's a lot of Marvel I love that I think people would like universally agree is awful. Forceworks is awful, but there's a kitsch value to it of Marvel trying to be that early era image, that I love. What's the Caleb?
I will not have you besmirching Forceworks, sir.
No, it's not great. It did have a great pop-up cover for that first issue.
But and the end is like confusing as hell when they go to the crossing. The crossing is, oh my god.
It was
people who write it were confused by that.
I got it because Scarlet Witch. I mean,
Yeah. But so it's just that there's not a lot of Marvel that's connecting with me right now. One that is though is Defenders. I am so happy we're getting more Defenders. Yeah. I wish that was a monthly book.
So the Marvel books that are connecting with me right now are actually books that are more. They're not. So, for example, I was trying to think of how to say this. Well, the thing book right now, like it's not touching really the other books in the universe. She-Hulk right now is amazing, and this is just picking up stuff.
And the thing is, that's by Walter Mosley.
Yes,
the primary roles.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it's really good. Tom Riley does amazing art like that. But it's like I'm to the point now too. I actually like books like that because I don't need to keep up with the broader universe. Like I'm reading a lot of the X-Men stuff because it's fun, but I don't need to keep up with all of it. I don't need to know what the Fantastic Four are doing. The Avengers is not firing on any cylinders right now.
I'm so far in, I can't jump off yet.
Yeah,
that's which is nuts, and it's I don't even enjoy the book yet. I have every issue of Aaron's run.
Same. But those aren't the books that are bringing me that Marvel joy, right? It's these disconnected stories that are almost doing their own thing. And, things like She-Hulk, they touch in a little bit. Like, I think She-Hulk was in Fantastic Four this week or something. But it's just, like, I don't need those broader stories. I like that they're like, yeah, we're part of this universe, but here are singled out things that you can go on an adventure with that you're just going to have fun.
Which, for me, was kind of the reason why I was keeping with Avengers, because there's just a natural tie to other events by having that in. All right, we're kind of strapped for time, but I think we can go through our second books really quickly. So just plow through them. Steve, what was the second book that you're reading that you're enjoying?
Let me put myself off mute. So the second book that I picked up, Scout Comics has been putting out some really amazing, very interesting books over the past year, or actually a couple of years. And they're not necessarily monthly books, and Beyond the Beyond is one of them. I think this issue came out just the other week. The next issue isn't until March, so it's basically a quarterly book. Beyond the Beyond here is put out by Christian Tropiano, who does the words, and John Fernando, who does the art. And it's fun. It's a fun, interesting setup for a first issue of a good sci-fi mystery explorer of the unknown kind of situation. The book opens very interestingly on a couple, the Andromedas, who are explorers and have just discovered some fantastic, amazing planet. It's something so unspeakably wonderful about it. And they communicate with their boss, Sergei Page, who seems like to be, I guess, the generic CEO, who's very young looking in his hologram. Just to let him know, it's like, hey, this amazing thing happened. We saw this great thing. And he basically has the robot drones that he has following their ship destroy their ship, killing them. We fast forward several, decade and a half into the future, and we're introduced to their children, Sirius and Nova. Nova is a rebellious teenager. She doesn't really care about the school that she's at and the Omnicorp sort of dictating her life and her life choices for the future. Her brother Sirius, on the other hand, is very much a company man. She wants to be an explorer like her parents, and even though exploring is expressly discouraged by the Omni Company, they're more into the mining and the real aspects, and they basically said, if you go exploring, you're going to get blown up by black holes. Don't do it. Just, keep your head down. You'll be successful. She doesn't want to do that. She wants to follow in her parents' footsteps. And through this book, you get introduced to kind of that yearning that she has to find out not just what happened to her parents, but also to experience the universe that's out there. So I think it's really great. You should check it out. Again, issue number 2 is not coming out until June, so you should be able to find this on your shelves. Thanks very much, Scout Comics.
All right, over to Chris. Chris, what's the second book that you're reading that you're enjoying?
Real quick, hey, look, it's another Archie. Who would have guessed? Chilling Adventures in Sorcery, number 1 and one shot came out last year. Basically, it's like an anthology hosted by Madam Satan. One of the stories, Archie gets into like a 5-night with Freddy's kind of situation. Another one, Jughead's eating, comes back to haunt him. But my favorite thing about this is, back in the 70s, my favorite Archie artist, Sam Schwartz, would always do one-page ads called Dipsy Doodles, in which Jughead would be a painter, and he would be painting stuff, and whatever he would painting would wind up like coming to life or somehow screwing with him. And in this one, he paints monsters of Betty and Veronica who basically murder him. And when I first saw this, I could not stop laughing, and it was such a delight. So I recommend that. Hard to believe.
Nice.
I recommend an Archie comic.
I think I have that.
I love that cover.
I'll have to check because I just put them in. I just put them in the Madam Satan Sabrina pile. I may have that. I have to take a look. All right, Caleb. What's the second book you're reading that you're digging?
So emphasis on you're only 50% right. I read it. I don't know that I dig it. As you can see behind me, I'm a Hulk fan. You guys know this. Last week, a book came out that I was really anticipating, very, very much anticipating, and I may have built it up in my own brain, but I really didn't enjoy it whatsoever. That is Jim Rugg's Hulk Grand Design monster.
Interesting.
I don't know. Like I've liked the Grand Design books so far. There's an encyclopedic value to them that I am drawn to. I think that they're really fun. Pisker's X-Men book it not only walked you through a long continuity, but it showed you the relationships and all the heart, right? Scioli's Fantastic Four walked you through a long continuity, but also took a left turn and showed you took a different take on it. It didn't stick to canon. It showed you a lot of different stuff, and I thought, but it showed you the relationships and how those connections really tied in and built the love of that family. This book walks you through a loose continuity, and mainly it's Hulk's relationship. Like everybody's kind of in there, but it's mostly just Hulk's relationship with the leader that brings it to him. To be fair, the art is wonderful. It is Jim Rugg, and he gives you exactly what you should expect from a Jim Rugg book. It's multimodic. He is stylistically adept. He does everything that I love from a Jim Rugg book, and I do love Jim Rugg's books. But he forgets to include the one thing that made those other books fun, and not just I found this blip on Encyclopedia or Wikipedia or whatever. They don't get into the characters that make this important. They don't like Betty's there, but they don't. He doesn't have those one-liners that tug at the heartstrings of Betty. Rick Jones is in there, but he doesn't establish how important Rick Jones was. Thaddeus Ross, for what it's worth, that relationship is not built up. His relationship to his cousin is not the heart is not there. Ultimately, it was a really drawn book that walks through, like I said, glosses over a lot of really important parts. They're there, but oh, hey, by the way, this happened, and also the leader was over here, and it's it just kind of glosses over stuff. So there's not a lot of life to this book. There's not a lot of love, and for a book that he supposedly went to the mat for to get, I don't get that out of it. So pick it up. It might be worth your while. I'd love to hear the differences of opinion, but it just didn't do it for me. So
I took that off my pre-order at the last second, and I think I'm glad I did.
You want my copy?
Not the way you're selling it. All right. I'm guess Chris is taking care of his new rescue pug there for a second. I was hoping that he might be able to weigh in because I have a feeling that he has this book in hand. But the other book that I wanted to talk about, this came out in November of last year. This was Star Wars Life Day, and over time we've gradually seen elements of the Star Wars Holiday Special have come into play in the actual continuity for Star Wars. And this one's a bit uneven. If you're a Han and Chewie fan, I think you'd love it. Absolutely beautiful cover on the main cover by Phil Noto. Absolutely beautiful cover. But there is one story in here. There's a framing sequence of Han, again trying to get Chewie home to Kashyyyk for Life Day, and it deals with some of the other stories that are connected with that particular celebration for the Wookiees. But there's one really beautiful, simple story in here. The writer is Justina Ireland, and the artist is Georges Jeanty. It's called Deck the Halls, and it involves a Jedi named Nib Assek and her Wookiee Padawan, who was named Burayaga, and there aren't too many Wookiee Jedi in the play. There's one that pops up in Rebels, there's a few, but they generally aren't a culture that have had too many Jedi. And what's going on the particular Life Day on Kashyyyk, we don't have a specific date, but it is noted as a long, long time ago, that there were these ornaments that came from off-worlders that they sold to the Wookiees. And since then, there's just been a darkness about the festivities and the mood on Kashyyyk. And it's through this particular Jedi that she determines that it's actually the ornaments that put them. It's a nothing story, but the art is beautiful, and there's nothing sadder than sad Wookiees. Sad Wookiees are sad
Wookiees.
But just a nice little holiday story in there. The other two stories are fine. Wookiees as slave labor always kind of gives me pause. That gets me worried. And an interesting use of C-3PO and R2 as decoys in a later story. It was good, but I think it was worth the admission price. Let's put it that way. Star Wars Life Day one shot from November last year. That was in my other book, and I saw you had it, Steve, there.
Yeah, and actually the interesting thing with the I don't know if you've read any of the High Republic books that have come out. What the Jedi Master was talking about there, the Drengir, was a major factor in the first High Republic story arc. Actually, the first couple of them. Where there's a giant sentient evil plant that would take over whole planets and almost destroy the Jedi Order.
And that certainly ties into the way the ornaments are constructed.
They're like seeds or something, which was really I
just thought it was like just a nice little gem of a story. At the beginning there. Yep.
Actually, I really like the 3PO as decoy story. I thought that was a lot of fun. Yeah. And the dialogue there was great.
Chris, I know that you're a fan of the holiday special. Do you have this one too?
I have it. I haven't gotten around to reading it yet.
Yeah. Yep. I think you'll enjoy it. And just keeping in this one-shot vibe that we've had going, just when you are busy, this is the perfect way of getting your comic book fix. Well, thank you all for joining us. Chris, thank you very much for hopping onto this show. I'm really looking forward to doing the panel with you on Saturday and just seeing you in person. It's been about a year.
Going to comic shows with Bill is one of my favorite things in life. Just us going through the back issue bin and being like, "Hey, do you like this? Do you like this?" Like, it's the best. No. If you ever get a chance to go to a comic show with Bill, do it. It's amazing.
Yep. I'm a very good hunting partner. I will say
absolutely.
I will say that I'm a very good hunting partner. All right, we're going to wrap this show up, and when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him, and we do something very similar. We woof at something that may be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your Woof of the Week?
Well, really quick, I did also want to mention, and this is part of my wolf, is Nottingham number 6 came out, so go and pick that up. It's a new storyline. But one of the things that I did want to recommend for this week, again, because I watch way too much TV, I was very interested in the Mary Whitehouse story. So BBC has actually put out a 2-part documentary series called Banned! The Mary Whitehouse story, which is the history of BBC's most famous gadfly, or the UK's most famous gadfly of the 20th century, Miss Mary Whitehouse, who went on a crusade in the 60s, I think starting in the 60s, and all the way until the early 90s, until she passed away, to turn back the tide of progressive sexuality and just disgustingness that was in the UK media. All that time. So what was on TV, radio, movies, all that stuff. She is one of the people who was responsible for the Video Nasties ban in the 80s over there in the UK. So fascinating series. If you have BBC, if you have access to it, definitely check it out, because it is pretty eye-opening. And you almost, interestingly enough, it's interesting if the BBC is doing this, but she's not as big of a villain as maybe she was painted out to be at the time. I mean, she's not great.
There. I'm certain once you get to the 80s, it gets there.
Oh yeah, she in the 80s she kind of goes off the rails.
Yeah.
But she's a fascinating figure, so I recommend checking it out and checking out some of the other media that has been put out about her.
All right, over to Chris. Chris, what is your Wolf of the Week?
My Wolf of the Week is Character Options in the UK have been putting out some fantastic Doctor Who re-releases in their figure sets. This of course, is from Tom Baker's first appearance, which was Robot. This robot was originally available as a Build-A-Figure years ago that was impossible to kind of get in the States for a decent sum, without spending an arm and a leg. This is a very affordable set. You can get easily imported from Amazon. I highly recommend it. Character Options has been just one home run after another with their Doctor Who figures lately. And for fans of the classic series like myself, as well as the new series, their figures are just terrific. I can't say enough good things about what they're putting out these days.
And I think it should also be mentioned for people tuning in, is just as Chris is an Archie expert, Chris is also very much a Doctor Who expert. So you know what you like, and you like what you know.
Exactly.
I'm glad to see that. All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your Wolf of the Week?
Well, Bill, since you brought up that Marvel stalwart iconoclastic series, ForceWorks, my Wolf of the Week actually goes out to a book that came out yesterday, and it's a book that I picked up. I'm betting Bill did. I could be wrong about that, but I think he might have. But that's Project Superpowers. And the reason
I gotta say, I know we had a Dynamite embargo.
Mm-hmm.
I had to lift it for this.
Yeah, no,
So it is in my it is in my box. Yeah.
Well, and the reason I tether this to the ForceWorks, like you said, is because it's being co-written, I would say, by Andy Lanning, who wrote ForceWorks, but has wrote so many other really, really good series. And it's also being co-written by Ron Mars, who, again, these are two men that they've had some misses, but they have a pretty high hit rate throughout their history. They've written a bunch of stuff, and to have them writing the Project Superpowers characters, I'm really excited about this. It's art by Emilio Utrera, colors by Arthur Helsey, letters by Tom Napolitano, and Mike Ruth did that cover. So I haven't read it yet. It's like I just got my book today for this week, so super excited. But I love Project Superpowers, so go check out this new series from Dynamite.
Yep, picking that up at my LCS this weekend for sure.
Yeah. That's one thing I have to say. There isn't a Project Superpowers series that isn't worth exploring.
I wish they would come out with some omnibuses. There need to be some big.
They do have one. They've had one,
which comprises 1 and 2. The original
Okay.
1 and 2
Yeah.
volumes, which were the ones
'Cause
that
I have
Alex
that.
Ross was the most heavily involved with.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the Black Terror alone could have an omnibus between those with that run. My Wolf of the Week also goes to a documentary, this time one from HBO Max, and it's called The Invisible Pilot. It's a 3-part series. Only the first part has come out, and it concerns Gary Betzner. Caleb, I'm not sure if you have proximity to Hazen, Arkansas. I don't know how close that is to you.
My mother teaches at Hazen High School or Hazen
Oh.
Middle School. She teaches first grade there. It is the next town over from the town I grew up in.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Okay,
cool.
well,
My
then you
little brother
probably know the
graduated.
story about Gary Betzer, who was a crop duster who apparently died in 1977 by jumping off a bridge in Hazen. Some exploration into Gary's background found that he was using crop dusting and the flying to be a smuggler. But that's only a small portion of the story. This first episode has a moment literally in the halfway point where my mouth dropped and I rewound it twice just to make sure that they were actually doing and saying what they were doing and saying. I cannot wait for where this goes. The suggestions that this ties into the Miami drug trade and the Dixie Mafia and Iran Contra. I mean, it blows your mind where this series may go given the seeds. But the halfway point in this particular series, it's a mouth drop like I have rarely experienced, certainly in a documentary series. So as I said, it's called
Dixie Mafia. Oof.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
as I said, it's the Invisible Pilot, produced by Adam McKay. Some of the footage comes from a friend of Gary Betzer's son who wanted to tell his own version of the story and filmed from, I believe, 2007 to just 2 or 3 years ago. And the passage of time and the effects of that of certain people within Gary's family, it's striking. It's striking, particularly his son. I don't want to give too much away. It's so easy to give it away to tell you a lot about the nuts of the story. But go watch it, please, because I was blown away by it. The Invisible Pilot on HBO Max. It's going to be a 3-episode series, an episode released each week. The first episode is out. Next episode will be out on April 11th.
Now I gotta watch it. It's hometown.
You sold me on that.
Yeah. All right, Chris, if people want to reach out to you, where can they do so?
Find me social media everywhere at Sci-Fi Explosion.
Okay. Very simple. I was expecting something else, but
tune into my Twitch show tomorrow night at 7:30, and then all new Cosmic Cartoons this Saturday morning from, I believe I'm going from 9 to noon this week.
Okay, how does that work out with the show? You just heading out after?
If you have a smart TV, just get Twitch on there. You can get the app and then just watch. Just look for Sci-Fi Explosion, or go to twitch.tv/Sci-Fi Explosion. It's fun, family friendly, and free.
But for you personally, on Saturday, can we get together while that show's on, or I don't know how?
Yes, because it's pre-recorded.
All right, we got to talk about it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Again, Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
We certainly. We were always happy to have you, and again, I still hold out hope that you're going to be reunited with at least a portion of your collection. I honestly, in my gut, feel that.
Yeah.
I just hope it's simple and not at gunpoint. You know.
You could see me flipping tables at.
All I know, dude,
Saturday.
I'm from New Jersey, and I'm certain your Philly comes out at points.
Oh my God! Yes, it does.
All right. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you want to listen to us, please do so by downloading us through Apple Podcasts, listening to us through Stitcher Radio, or many of the other podcatching platforms. If you're tuning in, we thank you for joining us for this live stream. If you're catching us later on YouTube, please subscribe and please leave a positive review. We really want to expand our profile on that particular platform. So until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And before we go, Caleb, best of luck to you with your finals. We know we might not see you for a couple weeks, but we're really hoping everything is smooth sailing during your last stretch of law school.
Thanks, guys. And yeah, I'll probably be absent for an episode or two just because wrapping this up. But you're in my hearts.
Yeah. Unless you lose your mind, like I gotta talk comics. I can't talk federal tax law.
Bridget Hazen, apparently.
Or come on and talk federal tax law. Why not?
All right.
No one wants that.
There was a time. Never. All right. Until. All right. If you're listening, you're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof.